Ladies and gentlemen, NC was wrong, okay? And NC was mean. Today's debate is not about the debate about poor and rich and who can watch these shows, okay? Today's debate is about, as a community, how do we move forward? And how should the government respond and react to everything that's happening around us? And coming from the side government, what we want to say is that the government, as the father of the nation, must promote the concept of civility and restraint. And if to some extent, banning these kind of shows on TV will send that message, and that side government is happy to stand on those grounds. Okay? There are 4 things I'd like to discuss on today's debate. First is that we want to talk about the responsibility of the government that NC didn't really respond and just, laughter his way out. Second, let's talk about a decent characterization of what really are blood sports. Because apparently both teams kind of have a different picture of what blood sports are. Third, let's talk about audience perception. And lastly, let's talk about this discussion and the role of the media and whatnot. So the first thing, let's talk about the role of the responsibility of the government. Apparently, Lynn spent almost half of her time talking about the responsibility of the government. Given the fact that media becomes now like an omnipresent, the government do have the responsibility to set an acceptable moral standard. And we didn't really hear any response coming from the opposition side. Because apparently what we're not really saying that we want to ban these things. We're not against freedom of choice or like people enjoying all of these things. If you're really into those gross things, we're not banning you to watch it, What we're saying is that we just don't like it on TV. And that's the debate, right? We said that we will be treating these kind of materials just like, pornographic materials. And that's supposed to be the debate. This is not a debate whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. This, like when it comes to blood sport, what we're just talking about is that we don't want it out on TV. Now, the second clash move more on blood sports. After the second point, okay? We have this weird discussion about blood sports because I think Lynn was very clear during her speech. What Yuki told us was that he kind of like romanticized the rules of blood sports, right? Like, at the end, it's more about winning. That, it's actually they have rules to follow. What we've been saying here is that blood sports to some extent is like a structure of violence, right? You do have rules, but what are the rules? One is that you need to knock out the person. You need to beat the hell out of him, in order for you to win. If not, he needs to yield. And then the third thing is only like, if these 2 things won't happen, and then we will start counting points. And we think that's really bad. Especially when you publicize these things. And we don't like this kind of situation. But then again, NC in this case discussed that, if you don't show it on TV, then these people would go insane. The rules would disappear. Like, really? We're not talking about just random blood sports, right? We characterize this debate like MMA. These are professional league. These people do have careers when it comes to joining all of these things. Just because it's not publicized, it doesn't mean that the rules will disappear. They still have a goal to win. Whether we agree whether it's a good thing or not, they will still continue. It's just that as a government, we don't want to see those on TV. And that's basically the point that we're talking, the thing that we want to clarify when it comes to blood sports. But before anything else, yeah.
So if certain moves in these blood sports, like punching the eyes or grasping the testicles, are restricted, will these athletes do these moves in order to win or to celebrate their violence?
That's the thing about publicizing it or like putting it on TV. Because the idea of putting on TV is that there's other channels that you can watch, right? So in order for these shows to grab attention from the media, then they need to hype it up, right? In order to gain media mileage and to gain more audience, then they need to become more violent. And that's basically the idea of glorification of violence that we've been saying. That's very wrong, especially it's on TV now. Because now, I can watch Discovery Channel, National Geographic, Cartoon Network, but look at this show, this seems so real. Then it would gain, these kind of attention from the people. And then again, I think this is how the third discussion is very important. The perception of the audience. Because apparently, NC wanted to talk more about the rich and poor. This is not a debate about about the rich and the poor. This is not about who can access it or not. What we're saying is that maybe audience are smart, right? But then again, we have this idea of desensitization, right? If you keep watching something, sometimes you would agree that, yeah, maybe it's fine, yeah, maybe it's okay. Then that's how you promote all of this, the idea of violence. Because apparently, what we're saying is that maybe there would be people who would really, really like it, like the hardcore fans of blood sports, and they would always watch it. That's not the debate. We don't need to change their mindset because their mindset will never be changed, right? The debate is more about those who are just flicking the channels, maybe kids, like those not really into sports, because they keep watching all of these things, because it's always televised, it has a lot of, support, then, how it affects these people coming from the government side. We think it's actually very problematic. But yeah, last point.
So why government ethical standards shouldn't be applied to the people who can pay, who can see these kind of violent video games?
Because at the end of the day, as a father of the nation, the government do have the responsibility to promote certain types of morality or certain ethical standards. And we don't think that's the kind of standard that the government should be promoting nowadays, right? Maybe, I don't know, in 60s, 70s, when women cannot vote, that's fine, right? But we've been struggling when it comes to all of these principles and values in the status quo. And we think this is in line with all of these nice things that we wanted to stand for as a community, as human beings. And that's basically the goal of the government side, that we're saying that these moral standards should actually be promoted by the government side. I didn't time myself. Alright, so last discussion, right? Let's talk about media. So why media, right? Samuel talked more about and characterized media very nicely, and there was no response coming from NC. He talked more about how this is actually a communal space, right? That this is where, to some extent, we share things so that we can construct our own community, we can construct our norms and values. And norms and values do change, as we go by, right? So that's why what we're saying is that if these things, to some extent, promote and glorifies, the culture of violence, perhaps the government should take a stand and make sure that these kind of, development of not so nice principles will be banned, right? Because at the end of the day, we like people doing whatever they want to do. But the government must be clear on what kind of society they want to establish. And coming from the government side, we stand for civility, restraint, and not really when it comes to random, violence and whatnot. With all of these things, we're proud to propose. Thanks.